in meditation, mouth breathing or nose breathing? So do they mean breathing through the nose or breathing through the mouth? You can also try breathing through your ears or breathing through your skin. It doesn't really matter where you breathe. Yeah? For some people it's a certain pollen season right now, and they get a very stuffy nose, and then if you're then told you have to breathe through your nose, it can be very annoying. And Ajahn Brahm also gets hay fever usually in the wheat season, when I also get it, not as bad as him though, but that it would be around October, something like that. I think now it's more the trees that are starting to blossom. But during that season, Ajahn Brahm also says he sometimes struggles to breathe through his nose. And he explains that for a long time he was quite I don't know if he uses the word annoyed, but he was always trying to breathe through his nose, even though it was like almost stuffed. It's right, Venerable, he sometimes tells that story, and then he's like meditating like this. And it never got peaceful, he says, until he realized, why do I need to breathe through my nose? It's just a thing he always been doing, automatically. But why not try breathing through your mouth? Can be also very peaceful. So it doesn't really matter. Maybe if you breathe through your mouth, or through your mouth, it might dry up a little bit, but then you just swallow and continue on. Whatever comes most naturally. And it's the same with whether you pay attention to your breath. That's a question closely related to this. Do you pay attention at your nose, or at your throat, or your belly? I sort of already touched upon that. But just let it come naturally wherever the breath feels comfortable. And you can also sort of focus on the breath as a whole. Almost like it has no location at the same time. It's sort of your whole body, but at the same time no location. You know you're breathing in, you know you're breathing out, you know long or short, but you don't really know specifically where you're feeling it. You sort of forget about the location of the breath in a sense. And that is a very peaceful way to focus on the breath. Because sometimes when you focus specifically on your nose, you might get headaches if you focus too hard. Yeah. So at some point, I was going to talk about this later, but might as well continue that sutta. Where is it? Oh, here. So I talked about as you breathe in and out, you practice calming the breathing. That was the last thing we discussed. And then it continues. As you breathe in and breathe out, you practice experiencing joy. Or delight is how you could translate it. As you breathe in and out, you practice experiencing bliss or sukha. These two go together, is when your breath just becomes very subtle and very beautiful to look at. Ajahn Brahm calls it the beautiful breath. It becomes joyful, delightful. And you can't almost not tell, is this a mental feeling or a physical feeling? They sort of blend together. Because as I said, the breath itself is not beautiful, it's just air going in and out. But it's the way you look at it that makes it beautiful. Just like the piece of tape on the wall that I saw earlier today. There's nothing intrinsically beautiful about it, but the way I looked at it, saw all the light reflecting, it's really beautiful. It's the same with the breath. It's your mind that makes it beautiful. And at this point you can sort of start to lose sense of the location of your breath in the body even more. Because then the Buddha says, as you breathe in and out, you practice experiencing, and this word is a bit hard to translate, the citta sankhara, and I translate it as the mental construct, but it means when the breath is sort of reflected in the mind. Yeah? You know you're breathing in and out, you don't really feel it in the body anymore. The breath has disappeared, and it's sort of the mind takes its place. And this is already getting quite deep, but it is sort of an echo of the breath in your mind. So at some point you lose, first of all, you might lose already awareness of whether you're breathing in and out, because the breath becomes so subtle that, and you're so much in the moment, that the in and out almost become the same. You can't really tell the difference anymore. And that's when the breath starts to become more like a mental idea. So that is what also can happen. And it doesn't matter where you focus the attention on the breath, but I do find it helpful, that instruction, to focus sort of generally on the breathing. Yeah? If you really focus very intensely on your nose, then it's harder to get to this mental construct, as I explained it, compared to when you just generally focus on the breath. It's hard to sometimes put these things into words, but give it a try when you try meditating. See if you can just focus on your breath in a broader sense. Maybe somebody can suggest a better way to explain that. But Ajahn Brahma has explained it very often as well. And his book, Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond, I can recommend to anybody. It goes in much detail on the mindfulness of breathing. Actually, these questions are very similar, because I already read this one. Look at this one. You see, it's very old and wonky. Earlier today, I was just on a little walk, or was it yesterday? And you might have seen this man working in the gardens, Nicholas. And I think he told some others as well. He was also, when he left the monastery, I call this a monastery, but this retreat center, he also decided to clean a little bit at the roadside, because he saw some beer cans and so forth. You can be very thankful for Nicholas for cleaning and working on the gardens. But then, when he was working there, cleaning up, he also found a piece of paper just in the bushes. And it was actually a question. And he said it must have been there for years, Venerable, and nobody ever answered it. So he said, you better answer it. Yeah, maybe one monk thought, this question is too difficult, I'll just... and he put it in his pocket, and then it sort of fell out, and it blew across the road, and it ended up somewhere in the bushes. But stubborn questions find their way back into the box. And I'll read out these questions together, because I read this one just now. This one, hello Venerable, where does our inner voice come from? And what makes it keep going? Why does it say the things it does, even when we find them appalling, sometimes, in brackets, sadhu? And this one says, where are the emotions coming from? And do they come from the same source as the thoughts? Thank you. Yeah? These are basically the same questions. So where do our emotions and thoughts come from? First of all, I would say that, since this question asks, are they coming from the same place? Emotions and thoughts are intertwined. It's almost like a spectrum. Yeah? It's not like thoughts are one thing and emotions another. We often live in this space of words, and especially analytical people think that thoughts can be completely separate from emotions, but they go together very much. The way you feel is the way you think, and the way you think is connected to the way you feel. You never meet an angry person who's thinking all kind thoughts, right? Or the other way around, a kind person with a loving, open heart, and who's then thinking, this person, rah, rah, rah. That doesn't happen. So emotions and thoughts go together. So are they you can treat them as the same thing. Yeah. But where do they come from? Do they come from the same place? And I would say they don't come from any particular place. They're just arising, passing away. There's no real underlying thing that creates the thoughts. The thoughts are like bubbles that sort of appear. And you could say that angry thoughts come from defilements and kind thoughts come from an enlightened mind, but that is true in one way, but in a deeper sense, thoughts are just impermanence. Yeah? Things happen and then they pass away again. And they don't come from some kind of entity that's underneath it all. That's actually very helpful to realize, because then you can see, oh, these thoughts, they're just sort of visitors in my mind. Yeah? And why do you think they're appalling? Because you think they're your thoughts, and you identify with them. You think they should be better, or something like that. But in a deeper sense, thoughts just happen to us. And you can maybe sometimes see that in meditation. You sit there and you realize that the thoughts just come, in a sense. Yeah? In another sense, you could say that you are the one who creates the thoughts, but this is one way of looking at it. When we go into this level of the mind, sometimes words can't touch upon it. So that's why we meditate, right? It's the whole purpose of this retreat. And I said at the start, silence, that's where the answers are. My words are blah, blah, blah. So, but my words point one way. And then you meet another monk who seems to be saying the opposite. Right? Or another nun, or another layperson. But that's because we're just trying to point at certain aspects of how to look at these things. I too want to leave home life and go forth into homelessness to practice the Buddha's teachings to end rebirth. It's a beautiful aspiration. I hope there's no but coming now. Is it possible to just practice Dhamma Vinaya without the baggage of rites and rituals that countries observe? I find it distracts from the valuable teachings and practice. Would mendicants still get supported by Westerners for the Dhamma without the blind religious following? Well, I don't know where you come from, probably a Western country. But if you come from a Western country and you see the things are done here in Australia and we bow to the Buddha, yeah, there are some religious aspects to it, but it's not that bad actually. You can visit other countries and there's much more religious there. We are pretty secular in a sense over here. But the monastic tradition, you say you too want to go into homelessness, so that means that basically means to ordain. That's what, at least what I think you mean. And that is a tradition going back 2,500 years. The way we do things here, maybe not every individual aspect goes back 2,500 years, but in general it goes back all the way to the Buddha. And it has survived for that long, this tradition of monasticism. Also the bhikkhunis survived for 2,500 years. That's pretty amazing. It's one of the oldest institutions, the Buddhist monastic orders. So they must be doing something right with these so-called religious traditions and so forth. So I think I explained before, when I first started watching Ajahn Brahm online as a layperson, I thought, it's silly, these robes and these statues. I was a super secular, I was brought up like an atheist basically, And I was a staunch materialist, didn't think about that there was anything beyond this life. And even the aspects of virtue, at first I thought, well, whatever, virtue, who cares? I just want to make my mind still to be able to sleep better. I think I said that already. So I did follow Ajahn Brahm's meditations instructions, and bit by bit, more and more started to make sense. Oh, yeah, okay, the precepts. Yeah, okay, I can understand, or at least I can try it out in my life, to see if that helps me. So even as a student already, I followed the 5 precepts, including not drinking alcohol. Whew, that's so hard as a student. Everywhere there's pressure to drink alcohol in the student life. But I did manage. I think maybe since I took the vow, I had 1 beer when the Netherlands was playing a soccer game, because I was actually with bad friends at that point, and they just sort of forced it up on me, and I didn't like it at all, but I did it. But anyway, whatever. Well, I did that, and I started accepting more and more of these teachings, and I saw more and more in it. And also the bowing, I started to understand. When we bow down to the Buddha, we don't honor some kind of God in heaven, because the Buddha is no longer around. We also don't just think that this statue has magical properties. It's all about our mind. And when you bow down to certain qualities you see in the Buddha. Every time I bow down to whatever feels inspiring in my heart. Well, to be honest, when you live in a monastery, sometimes you have to bow down so often that at some point it just becomes okay. But I try my best to keep the intention there. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just have a look around at some of the monks when you visit Bodhinyana, observe how they bow, and then you can see are they either fed up with bowing for today or maybe not. Yeah. That's fine as well. But when we do bow, we bow down to qualities we see that are possible in our own heart. Kindness, generosity, wisdom, compassion is a big one I often bow down to. These qualities that the statue just represents. But it is funny, I think maybe in the Buddha's time things were even more secular in a sense than now, because the Buddha said, don't make statues of me, and he was very, it was a religion, but it didn't really stand out in any particular way, and maybe was even more down to earth than most other religions at the time. Maybe all other religions. Yeah, but maybe you find some tradition to ordain in that's even more, if you want to leave home for homelessness, I understand that to mean ordain, then you can find maybe some other traditions that are even more secular in a sense. Maybe some places in Zen, I don't know, or something like that. But it's just getting used to things. This feels like a message that just drifted from a far shore in a bottle, and that I just now pop the bottle and I find this message. Got excited by nimitta, help! Well, I hope that person who sent this message in the bottle is still alive and safe on their island. Got excited by nimitta. Okay, I did talk a little bit about nimittas already. So nimittas are when you become peaceful and your mind still gets more still, then it can happen that, actually that's in the Anapanasati Sutta as well. Might as well then continue that one. As you inhale and exhale, you practice experiencing the mind. So this is when you let go of the breath, you let go of the body as well, and you move towards the mind. In meditation, or at least in mindfulness of breathing, when it goes according to how the Buddha describes it here, as I said, it's almost never like that. It's always a bit up and down. This is just a helpful way to reflect upon it. Then at some point your 5 senses disappear, you don't hear much sound anymore. And then what can happen is that nimittas arise. And nimittas are the mind, a reflection of the mind itself. Actually, at that point, you might still be able to hear sounds and feel the body, but it will be more in the background. And the nimitta is usually, it represents itself as a light. It's just a mind looking at itself, and it has to sort of make sense of that experience, so it presents itself in a certain way, and often it's a light that you see inside. But it can also be other things like sounds or a certain feeling of some kind of mental body kind of idea, but lights are the most common. And this is a sign that your meditation is getting very deep already. So if people have never experienced this, then don't worry. This is you'll experience it one day. But some people also are much more naturally inclined to have these nimittas. Other people not. If you're not, don't worry, because some people might be naturally inclined to nimittas, but then they sort of get stuck there for a long time, trying to go even deeper, which is what we want to do. Yeah. They might get a lot of nimittas over the years, but never really go beyond that. And then you, the person who never had a nimitta in your whole life, and Ajahn Brahm talks about it all the time, and you're so stupid Buddhist. No, you're not. But you might be the one who experiences one nimitta, and just because you're not expecting anything, you go all the way. So if you don't have these nimittas, don't worry. And I mean that, right? It happens for many people actually. They don't, because they're not used to these nimittas, they don't know what to do, and they don't know what it is, so they just do nothing and expect nothing. And that's exactly what you need to do to go deeper. So you got excited by nimitta. So the Buddha also got excited by nimittas before his enlightenment. So that's the whole sutta that I mentioned before, the Upakulesa Sutta, the Sutta on defilements. And then the Buddha says, I was meditating and then lights and forms appeared in my mind. Yeah? There's some people who should know better who say that the suttas never describe nimittas. I don't know, they should read the suttas better, because it's not only in this sutta but in many suttas. It's quite clear that the Buddha talks about these things. Lights and forms in the mind. I don't know what else he would be talking, or lights and forms, maybe he doesn't say specifically in the mind, but when I was meditating, lights and form arose. And then I got excited, and my light, this light inside his mind, disappeared. And he realized, I got excited. And actually, I think he gives a simile, like it's a person looking for gold who suddenly comes upon a big treasure. Yeah, or multiple ways towards his treasure, or something like that. It's been a while since I read that. And then, even the Buddha's light before his enlightenment, Bodhisattva we should say, disappeared. And you too, excited, and the light disappeared. So person on the island who sent this message in a bottle, you're just like the Buddha, in that sense. What did the Buddha do? He decided, next time I won't be excited by that nimitta. Yeah. When I asked Ajahn Brahm this question during a range retreat once, he says, just before you sit down to meditate, just tell yourself, if a nimitta arises, I won't be excited. I won't get excited. Yeah, it's just another experience arising in the mind. And if you go through that multiple times, then you become more and more used to these experiences, and you can just let them arise without craving for anything deeper. Yeah? If you crave for, I know Ajahn Brahm often talks about jhana, so now I'm forced to talk about it as well. I would like to talk just about, leave the jhanas as like a mystery, you know. Nobody knows about them, because then you don't expect anything. But most of you already have expectations about it. But those expectations, if you have not experienced one yet, are wrong. Yeah? You think you might know what this is about, but you don't. The Buddha says, whatever you think it might be, it will be something else. So why would you crave for something you don't know what it is? And I really mean that. It's really something different. When you come out, you're like, what the hell was that? And why did I crave that? And you'll be really confused. And that is what leads to deeper insights. But you're like, yeah, I wasn't even there myself. Really weird. So yeah, in a way, nimittas are the deepest meditation you will experience as a self. And this is why people often can't go further than that. Because for the meditation to go deeper, you cannot be there anymore. You as a self needs to disappear and just let the meditation do its own thing. And there's no more sense of somebody watching at anything. But yeah, just let these nimittas, for people who experience them, just do their own thing. They're part of nature. And let them come to you if they want to. Don't chase after them. Don't try to change them. Don't try to interfere with them. Just be happy that they're there. And if they disappear, be happy that they disappeared. That's all fine. Dear Bhikkhu, suppose that's me. Could you explain about the stupas? Why not just have the statue as it is? Why the quote house, unquote, on the Buddha? Sadhu. So the stupas are these pointy things in front of here, yeah, the wizard hats, in a way. And these stupas actually go back to the time of the Buddha. It used to be that kings were buried underneath. It's what they call stupa. Stupa just means like a mound. So usually the king would be buried and they put a big pile of earth on top. They wouldn't necessarily build a structure on it, but it was just to sort of commemorate the king. Especially the bigger the king, the bigger the mound probably. And they did the same for the Buddha. After he passed away, they cremated him, and the ashes were spread to different places, and wherever they were put, they put a stupa on top. And some of these they've actually found, and they found probably it was the actual ashes of the Buddha in there, because it is inscribed upon the box that these are the ashes of the Buddha. At Sanchi, I believe. Not all the stupas they found. But anyway, so the stupa represents the Buddha's enlightenment. Yeah. And these stupas have a statue within. I don't think that's always the case. Most stupas are just a stupa without a statue. But there's a funny story about this statue. I think what was the temple called again, what these are based on? I think it was in Indonesia or something. Borobudur, yeah. Yeah, so actually the stones came all the way over from there, I believe, as well, by ship, and then they built this stupa. That's not the funny story. The funny story is that one of the monks from there once told that the statue within, yeah, you can see it through the holes, and if you are able to touch the statue from the outside, the monk said, then you can find true love. And Ajahn Brahm says, I hope I never see one of my monks or nuns trying to get into the stupa to touch the Buddha. Yeah, so it's a good question, why the house of the Buddha, but usually I think there would not be a Buddha inside. Now in Asian countries, they often also build stupas for very respected teachers, like Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Ben, Ajahn Man, and so forth, and also in other countries. And then they do usually also put a statue of that teacher inside. But I think if we ever build a stupa for Ajahn Brahm, let's not build a statue. He doesn't like that either. Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. Please share thoughts on picking up and putting down our past regrets, current struggle and future worries. When we return to everyday life, do you think the caretakers would mind if we left those bags by the gate? Actually, what day is it today? Tuesday? Oh, oops. Who left their bags of the past and the future by the gates? Who left them there still? Yeah? I have to apologize because I said you can pick them up when you leave, but today is the rubbish pickup day. I'm afraid that the Shire came and took them all away already. They're on the rubbish bin somewhere. And you don't need them anymore. But on a more serious note, how to let go of the past and the future. My robe is folding in a weird way. The past and the future. One thing that helps to contemplate how useful is it to keep thinking about the past and the future. The past, you can keep thinking about it, but is it going to make you feel any better? Is it going to change the past? Usually not. Usually it's just this endless ruminating. You bring up the same thing again and again, like a cow. They eat the grass and they swallow it, and that's not it. They bring it up again, chew it again, swallow it again, bring it up again, swallow it again, bring it up again, again and again. But humans are more clever when it comes to food anyway. Yeah, they eat it and they swallow it and that's it. But cows, I believe, are more clever with thoughts. I like to think so anyway, because they look so peaceful, and cows are my favorite animal. They just... Does a cow worry about the past? Yeah, what happened to them yesterday? Well, cows have emotions too, but generally cows probably don't think about the past in the way you do. And about the future. Yeah? Okay, you need to make some plans about the future. Yeah? When we plan a retreat, we need to plan some time out of our schedule. But how often do we think about the future? Again and again, think the same thoughts. When I was a younger layperson, especially before I started meditating, and I would imagine if I knew I was going to have a conversation with somebody, then I would imagine, okay, I'm going to say this, and they're going to say that. Then I'm going to say this, and then they are going to say that. Okay, and then this, and then that, and then that. Had the whole conversation planned out, maybe even multiple scenarios, in case they wouldn't say exactly what I thought they would. But already at the first word, and you're laughing because you're exactly the same, At the first word already, you lose all your plans and they say exactly what you didn't expect. Yeah. One time I ruined my retreat that way. At Rains retreat. And in a Rains retreat, at some point, the monks in Bodhinyana, I think it's the same in Dhammasaya, also get a 2 weeks private retreat. Do you get that as well? Okay. So you get a retreat within your Rains retreat. And monastic life is also a retreat from the worldly life. So you get a retreat within your retreat within your retreat. Then you sit down to meditate, so you retreat within your retreat within your retreat within your retreat. You're so far away from everything. But this was a range retreat a couple years ago. And what was I doing? I was sitting there, and this was nearing the end of the range retreat. Because I usually plan my retreat then. I don't know why, but that's just what I do. And after the range retreat, we have the big Katina day. Some of you have been here, and we all come here. And what we do on that day, aside from the ceremonies that happen here, which can already be quite busy, then the monks select one monk who receives a new robe. We call it the Katina robe. And that robe needs to be sewn by some other monks. And that takes quite a lot of effort, because you need to sew it within the same day. That's like a rule. And then, so from a bare piece of cloth, you need to mark it, cut it, iron it, sew it, and do it all in the proper ways. So it takes a lot of hours of work. And for many years, I've been doing that as a monk. Yeah. Every year it was Sunyo and some other monk sewing the Katina robe. And it was getting near the end of the range retreat. And usually then at some point, the Sangha asks, who's going to sew the Katina robe for this year? Yeah? And I was sitting there meditating. Well, meditating, quote unquote. And thinking, they're probably going to ask Sunyo again to sew the Katina robe. If Ajahn Brahm asks it, I will say this, no, in a way, very kindly, but I'll suggest somebody else. If the Sangha in general suggests it, I will say, I've done it for so many years. And all these sort of ways to say no, I was thinking of, because I didn't want to do it. Then I realized that I'm ruining my whole retreat by this. You know what? I'll volunteer to do it before they even ask. And a peace! Yeah? Sometimes these worries about the future, actually by planning, in a way, you can also get rid of them. If you come from kindness, say, I'll do it. And I don't need to argue over who's going to do it. And I sewed a very beautiful robe, I must say, together with Venerable Jaiko for Ajahn Brahmali. He was very happy with it, and now I'm so happy that I did it. And if I would have said no, I would have probably felt, not so good about myself. Maybe talk more about letting go of thinking in meditation in another session. I didn't really plan too much this retreat, but that is one thing I did think of touching upon more in detail. But we'll see. Dear Venerable, I understand the instruction to sleep enough and not torture yourself. Okay, you understand that. At what point does the instruction to be devoted to wakefulness, sitting and walking late at night, early in the morning start to apply? Does the meditation need to regularly be automatic first? Wonderful question again. I said at the beginning of the retreat, many of you are probably tired, have been working hard, and need rest. And when I asked who's been sleepy in the meditation, almost everybody put their hands up. When I did the interviews, many people told me, without me asking even, saying how tired they were and how much they appreciated that they could just rest. Yeah? And if you still feel tired, just rest. But at some point, I hope, maybe 9 days is not enough, but for some of you it will, that because of the stillness and not doing much, your energy starts coming. Yeah? So when you feel energy coming that you hadn't had before, then most of that one kind of sleepiness in meditation will mostly disappear. The kind that comes from just being tired, physically tired. And then it's time to think about maybe spending some more time in meditation and see if you can be awake and alert. Don't overstress yourself. Don't, now just because I say this, go and sit until 3 in the morning. here. Well, you can if you want to, but only if it feels natural. If you need to force it, then no. But it can be helpful to actually recognize the fact that your energy is coming back. To recognize, oh, my mind is becoming brighter. Yeah? More energy is coming. And then to direct that energy in the right place, which is being here, doing nothing. If you do nothing, then even more energy can come. So it's up to you to figure out when that moment is, at what point. But also, don't overdo it. You have to realize that when the suttas talk about wakefulness and only sleeping very little, then that means monks and nuns who have a really, really simple life, who are basically on a retreat all the time. Yeah? And for them it becomes natural to sleep less. And even living in Bodhi Jhana, sometimes get tired because we also have duties from time to time. And then I'm not gonna force myself to be awake. No. I'll answer them all in due time. Oh, you're like, that might have been my question. Please keep guiding the meditations, or part of. Yeah. That's not a question? No, yeah. The further we go, the less I'll talk during the guides. Sorry. Ajahn, is it okay to put milk in our tea or coffee after midday? Thanks. I usually put soya milk in. That is also considered allowable for monks in our tradition, not everywhere. But if you want to use milk, then you can do that as well. And that would not be breaking the 8 precepts, I believe. Especially not for a lay person. Yeah, you don't have to be as strict as monks and nuns. Okay, I'll end with this one. I had it on the side for a while, and I knew there were some similar questions, and I wanted to answer them at the same time. That's why I was looking for them, but I can't find them, so whatever. Could you explain us what enlightenment means? I know that probably there isn't an easy answer to that, but it's just to understand a bit better. Okay, well, maybe I didn't read this, but do you consider yourself enlightened? How would you understand it? Please forgive my very bad English. Well, at least it's easier to read than some of the other handwritings that I've had. So yeah, not bad at all. Generally you shouldn't ask monastics whether they're enlightened, because we are not allowed to say if we are. We are allowed to say no, but we are not allowed to say when we are. That would be one of our rules. Because why? Is to keep the monastics humble. Yeah. And it's not that one monastic goes around, I am enlightened, la 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 la, and all these others not. Of course, an enlightened person wouldn't do that, but an unenlightened person might, do that to get more following. Then they would actually, that's one of the severest rules for a monk or none to break. Yeah? Actually, the moment they do that, when they seriously claim to be enlightened while they are not, and they know that they are not, they're basically lying about that, then they are no longer a monk or nun at that very instant. It's called the Parajika rule, and it's one of the strictest rules. And this is why you shouldn't ask, because maybe, the monk just feels, or nun feels a bit ashamed, and then they say yes to you, your question. And that could be very severe circumstances. But it's okay that you ask, you didn't know. But in traditional countries, they usually understand to not ask those sorts of things. Same with jhanas, by the way. You can't ask monastics, do you have jhanas, right? Because same applies there as well. Which shows you how profound these jhanas are, by the way. Just as a little tangent. Yeah. It's a bit sad that people sort of argue about what jhanas are and how deep they are. And in some places they say, come to our retreat and we'll teach you jhana within 2 days. Yeah, it's guaranteed, sort of. Yeah, if they do that, they say everybody in our retreat can get jhana if they are patient enough, in a weekend retreat. Some teachers say that. Yeah, I'm not joking here. If they say that, that's not jhana, okay? Because if everybody can attain it, why would it be such a strict rule for monks and nuns to not be allowed to say that they have attained it? Yeah, everybody has attained it, but the monks and nuns are not allowed to say that they also. Yeah. It's something very, very, very profound. It's almost like bordering enlightenment, and it's called the happiness of enlightenment, Sambodhi Sukha. Because why? I just explained to you. The sense of self completely disappears. Yeah? The deepest meditation you as a self can have are these nimittas. When it goes any deeper, then you disappear. So that's why. So, can you explain what enlightenment means? I was actually hoping that somebody also would put in the question that Ajahn Brahm encouraged the nuns to ask. Can you explain about the meaning of life? Because it sort of comes down to the same thing. And the meaning of life, I've answered that question in various ways before in the past. But one way to think about it, and I was just in the office early this morning to print out the Anapanasati Sutta, then I saw this standing here. Yeah, some people recognize. So it's standing there. This is a machine. Yeah. You see there's a switch on the top, Venerable. Have you not seen this box before? No? Venerable Nadi, have you seen this before?
It's in the office.
Yeah, okay, well, you'll see in a moment. Well, it's not now in the office, but usually it is. This is a machine. There's a switch on the top. The machine does something. When I was an engineer, I designed machines that had a purpose, yeah? And the purpose, let's say you design a car, is to get somewhere. Yeah? What is the purpose of this machine? I flip the switch. It turns itself off. That's the purpose of life. Yeah, show people there. It goes a bit fast, but there's an arm coming out, like wee, and that just flips the switch back off. And that's the purpose of life. And it says on the box, Nibbānaṃ paramāṃ sukhaṃ. Nibbāna is the highest happiness. The purpose of life is to switch itself off. Yeah, that's one way to think about it. But really, is that a purpose? Here's another way to think about it. People ask this question quite often. What is the meaning of life? And then they assume they already understand what life is, right? Because you don't ask what is the purpose of life without thinking you already know what life is itself. Yeah? It's like if you give a gorilla a microwave and you ask what is the purpose of a microwave, they haven't got a clue, simply because they don't know what a microwave is. Yeah? They might understand what purpose is in general maybe, but microwave they've never seen before. Maybe maybe not a gorilla, but somebody living in a rainforest, like a tribal people. Yeah? They know what purpose means, but you give them a microwave, you say, what is the purpose of a microwave? They don't understand, so they just try out. Maybe it's to store bananas in, maybe it's some kind of drum, dunk, dunk, dunk. Now once they find out, you can heat food in it, that's the purpose. So you need to understand the thing, then you understand the purpose automatically. So now, here is a simile for life that Ajahn Brahm teaches, and which I will also teach now and adopt a little bit. You know, Google is designing these automatic cars nowadays that drive themselves. In Rotterdam, where I come from, for decades we've had buses without drivers. And life is like a driverless bus. You sit in the back of the bus, looking out the windows, seeing the scenery go by. Sometimes the scenery is really beautiful. Go through meadows and fields. Other times, the scenery is not so beautiful. Yeah? This is the things that go on in your mind and in your body and life. The scenery can be really ugly. You go through wastelands and slums and right through nuclear radiation zones even, you know. Couldn't get any worse. And of course it seems like the driver is always speeding up through the beautiful scenery. Yeah? Just racing past. Can't you just slow down, driver? Or can you not stop here, where life is beautiful, where I want to be? No, they just race on. And then you come to the ugly parts and the driver seems to slow down. And you shout to the front of the bus, "Go quicker, driver, go quicker. I don't want to be here. Drop me off somewhere where it's nice." And you come to a nice place. "Stop, stop, driver, stop here, stay here. Stay with this nimitta," whatever it is, or stay with this relationship that I like, or whatever you like, yeah? Impermanence always disappears. The driver keeps driving, you think. And you go to the front of the bus and say, I'm gonna show this driver. Tell him off. You walk to the front of the bus and you see there was never no driver in the first place. You see, there's no driver inside of us. This is the idea of no self. Nothing, no entity is in control of it all. Yeah? And I said to Ajahn Brahm, when he said, "How did the teaching go?" I said, "I open my mouth and words come out." I said, I had that idea in my mind. So if you open your mouth and words come out, you are not in control. That's where Ajahn Brahm ends his simile of the driverless bus. I would like to take it one step further. Imagine that the bus also no passenger in the bus. And it was just a bus driving through the countryside, through beautiful countryside, ugly countryside, but there were no passengers, no drivers in the bus. It was just like one of those buses in Rotterdam. I could sometimes just see them drive by and there was nobody in there. Yeah? This was years ago because they just put coils underneath the road and then the bus would just follow that, so it was much simpler than these Google cars. But you just see a driverless bus go by. And then you ask, what is the purpose, a driverless passengerless bus? What is the purpose of a driverless passenger bus? That is the purpose of life. And I would like to end it there. You can answer that question in your own way. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. For those people who do feel more energy coming up, now the retreat is progressing. Please know that although it is dark outside, inside your mind it can be light. So the day is not over yet. Actually, when Ajahn Brahm does his retreats, he starts his questions and answers at this moment, 8 o'clock, because he sometimes has to do stuff in the monastery before. He's well aware that it is a bit late, but that's just the way it is. So then it goes quite late. But I give you the opportunity to meditate still, instead of going to bed. But if you do want to go to bed, then you can do that as well. Thank you all for your attention, and I'll see you tomorrow. Please leave before me, yeah? And yesterday I also said you can also leave during the talk, right? And this was when I was a new monk, and I gave a talk in Nandamara. And a man just stood up in the middle of the talk. And I thought, is this talk so boring? He just stands up and walks away. And afterwards, his wife came up to me and said, "Don't worry, he's been sleepwalking for many years." It's just a joke, but never happened. It would be funny if it was real, but it's still funny.